One of the schools in which I recently started running growth for lost almost half of its new families every summer over the course of a few years. And in all that time, nobody once picked up the phone to ask a single one of these people why they had left. We tracked everything that was easy to count. Enrollment, revenue, the numbers that sit politely in a spreadsheet. But we never asked the families who left the one question that would have told us how to keep the new ones. When we finally looked, a few years deep, the families who leave turn out to leave the same way, for the exact same reasons, and almost all of it was visible months before anyone walked out. So this video is about the 3 things that data showed and how to see your own version of it before the next high enrollment season for you. Let's start with the part that surprised me most, and that is that families almost never leave when you think they do. And it is that every founder I work with knows this moment. Family's warm all year, the child shows up, but the parents are easy to pick up. Nothing in the surface is wrong. And then re-enrollment opens in the spring and they simply don't come back. There's not an argument or complaints or the warning you can point to. Just a quiet empty seat where a family used to be. That quiet is the whole problem and the data explains it. Inside the school year, families almost never leave. Across independent and alternative schools that I consult with, somewhere between 75 to 95% of families stay put from fall to spring. The leaving happens at one hinge, the summer. The single moment a family has to actively choose you again. So your attrition, meaning the families who don't come back, isn't a slow leak across the year, but it's a cliff with a date on it. And you never see the cliff coming because you're watching the wrong number. You're usually watching enrollment, a head count of who is sitting in the building today, and a head count tells you nothing until the seat is already empty. There's a study that I think about constantly from a world that has nothing to do with schools. Researchers look at the gyms with the lowest membership loss in the country. And the thing that predicted who would quit was never the cancellation. It was attendance quietly falling off. A member who slid from 3 visits a week to 2 was the one who canceled 2 months later. And by the time the cancellation came, the decision had already been made long before. In a lot of the independent and alternative schools that I consult with, usually they have at least 100 students. Usually they're making between $500 to $2 million in revenue. Your families are acting pretty much the same. I often find that the parent who goes quiet in March, who stops opening the emails, who skips the spring events, whose child is a degree less lit up than they were in October, that family is telling you something. That slow disengagement before the visible departure has a name. Silent attrition. And it is the most expensive thing in your building because you cannot fix what you refuse to look at. So from this point forward, I want you to start watching the leading thing, not the lagging one. Pick a single signal you can actually see. It could be something like email opens, perhaps event attendance, a 2-question check-in in February, and watch it the way you watch enrollment. When a family signals drops, you still have a whole season to do something about it. And I also want you to start thinking about how you arrange a lot of the events that happen within your school. If there's a particular event that stands out, like a showcase, a trip, something that a family would hate to miss, I want you to schedule it right after the re-enrollment window and announce it before, so that leaving ahead of time quietly means losing something real. Before we go into the next point, I really want you to think back to the last family that actually didn't come back, and then back to the spring before they went. The signs are almost always there once you know how to look for them. You weren't looking for them yet because nothing in your week told you to. So the beauty at this point is that now you will see it coming. The next question is which families? And here the data got uncomfortable in a way that should take some weight off you. Because you see, when we separated years of data of families who left into 2 categories, those who we could have kept and those we never could, the first thing it showed is that you're probably failing less than you think. The second thing is that the part you're responsible for is almost, it almost might put you to shame because of how predictable it can be. Let's call it 2/3 and a third. About 2/3 of the families who left did so for reasons that to some extent were not part of our control. And the biggest one was the plainest. Most of the schools around them were doing the usual game of, you have a teacher and they're lecturing you, very traditional. This family in particular, after having explored in this school that I have been working with, they had been exploring an alternative method of educating their children. They wanted those lectures back. They wanted the exams back. They didn't care about their child maybe flourishing or the hope that they would. They just wanted the tangible things that, to be fair, those parents grew up with. In some ways, this was a structural issue that couldn't change unless we changed the school, and the school didn't want to change despite the fact that it knew from the very beginning they was working in an environment in which families are very used to the traditional. So about 2/3 of these families that we had been losing, we were never going to keep them anyway. But then we have the other third of families, and with those, there's some patterns that we could have seen beforehand. We found that the families who started around the middle of the year, they left at well over 0.5%. We also found that the families who came in on discount, who learned from the very first conversation to think under the terms of, I'll try this at this price. When the price moved away from them, or when we tried to reduce the discount that they were receiving, they left. We had one family ask for the same discount again at re-enrollment. And again, when the answer was no, even though the child was driving, the family made a decision from the get-go from a financial perspective. So even though nothing was bad, nothing was just, not valuable, the decision remained anchored to a number, and the number changed, and they didn't want to keep with us. We also found within this another third type of family, and that was the family who never built anything with the school. Enrolled maybe in an afternoon and they didn't want to deal with us. And this looks different across different schools. Perhaps it might be the family, for example, that never attend a parent, let's say, interview or a parent event in which they're meant to be taught something that could be of value to their school, or not to their school, to their children. It is in these cases where the family wasn't involved in the building of the experience that we also see a high percentage of them just leave. And just because I want to add a fourth one, we also found a fourth type of family within this lasting third that we could have kept, but we didn't. And that was the family who was still enrolled, still paying, but had already left. With them, the invoice still kept being paid every single month. So the spreadsheet might have said that, this is a family that we still have, but in reality, their child might have checked out in November. The family, on the other hand, they might have been, halfway out the door in their heads. And across all these four types of families, the most important thing to remember is that all of them are fixable from a perspective of churn. And it is invisible precisely because the money keeps arriving. Across close to 7 years of work, at one point with tech companies, all the way from, small ones making about $1 million per year to bigger ones making about 500 million. And nowadays, working as a school executive and also as a consultant for independent and alternative education schools, I found that the single largest reason, or at least pattern reason, that people leave often doesn't have anything to do with price nor quality, but with overwhelm. People quietly quit what confuses them. A family that never understood your model, never got it translated into a language they could hold, they feel lost. And lost families leave, but likely on schedule, every single June. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to sort out your departures into two piles, the structural and the fixable, and be honest about which one is which. Stop grieving the families who wanted a different kind of school. Go and look hard at the mid-year starts, the discounts, and the families who are still paying while they quietly stop showing up in every way that isn't financial. That pile is your actual retention work. Count the families you lost last summer who started mid-year or came in on some kind of deal. That number is not bad luck. It's just money left on the table, and the beautiful thing is that the fault of them leaving is not theirs, it's actually yours. One aside before the last point. If this is making you want to see where your own family starts slipping, I built a family fit scorecard that walks you through the 7 places the right families get lost, fit, and retention among them. It's free and it's the first link below. You'll also find a video down there on how I do this work with schools. It's called the Right Families Method. Take the scorecard for now and stay with me, because the last point is the one move that pays for itself. It's the one almost nobody makes. And when I say that nobody makes, I'm putting myself on it. Because despite knowing that it had been years since we had a high percentage of people leaving, we never once called a single one of them to ask why. Not a single conversation. Well, to be fair, perhaps a few, but they happened mostly at random rather than it being an active approach from us to understanding why they were leaving. And this is not something that just happened within this school. It's something that it's pretty common across the schools that I work with. People leave and they never find out why. And to be fair, it is the single most valuable thing none of us were doing. Even in the business with the best loyalty on earth, the conversation with someone on their way out is sacred. Mostly for, let's say, 2 reasons. The first is that simply having it saves roughly half of the people who are about to leave. Half. And even if it's not half, maybe 20%, that's still pretty good. The second is that even when it saves no one, it hands you the exact reason they left, and that is worth more than any dashboard you will ever build, because it is the one truth instead of your guesses about the truth. The math under it does not flinch. Keeping a family you already have runs somewhere between 5 and 25 times cheaper than going out to find a new one. And shaving even a little of your attrition lifts the lifetime value of a family by a third or more. Retention, and I always say this, it compounds in a way that buying new families never will. As you start having calls, it's important to note that there's a craft to the call, and it is counterintuitive. When a family tells you they're leaving, every instinct says defend. And you do the opposite. You get more upset that they are, because only one of you can sit in the angry mode. And most of the time, they don't want to fight back. They want to just be heard. So instead of getting angry, I encourage you to just let them empty the whole thing out. And then you can ask the one question that turns the venting into a map. If these things have been different, would you have stayed? Because a yes there is no longer a complaint, it's a checklist, and you either work the checklist or you have learned exactly what to fix for the next family. You can also, gently name what they're about to lose, the cohort the child belongs to, the friends, the spot, the work the child has already built in your building, the rate perhaps that they will never see again. Once you do this, you can also mirror image with the families who stayed, the 3 and 4 and 5 year families, and ask them what almost made them leave and what made them stay. And as you start having these conversations, both with the people who stay for a long time and the people who left, I want to present you a very quick, honest warning, because it will happen to you. The first month that you start having these calls, your attrition will probably look worse, not better, because the families who had already left in their hearts and were coasting on autopilot will finally say it out loud. They were going to say it anyway, but it might be the case that they will say it faster. This is not a reason to just stop the practice at all. In fact, it is a sign that the practice of having this kind of exit calls are working. By the second month or third month of having exit interviews, everything should settle and everything should start improving. The assignment with this point is small and it is uncomfortable. This week, I want you to call 5 families who left in the last year and 5 who actually stayed, let's say 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I want you to ask them why and write down their words and not your translation of their words. If you have Google Meets or Zoom, I just want you to record the whole thing so that you don't add things that they never said. I promise you that you will learn more in those 10 conversations than in a year of staring at some dashboard that you built. The cool thing that will happen to you too, most likely, is that a few of those people who left might actually come back because they will realize all the value that they got from you and that a lot of the challenges or issues that they might have perceived were things that were solvable. You just didn't actually present the possibility of solving those things. By this point, you should already know which of your families have the deepest conviction. They are the ones usually who refer you without being asked. They re-enroll before you've opened the re-enrollment window. The only real question is whether you know, in their words, what those families have in common. If you've never asked, that is the first thing I want you to fix. And it costs you nothing but time. Let me now put my 3 points together, because I don't want you to remember that you don't lose families in the classroom. You lose them at the summer, or maybe if your school starts or your enrichment program starts in the winter, you lose them in the winter. And the most important thing is that you can see it coming if you watch the family instead of the head count. I also want you to remember that a lot of the attrition is never usually a reflection of the quality of the service, but it's just that maybe they shouldn't have been there at all. The beautiful thing though is that there's a high percentage of people who are leaving that you can also save. And finally, I want you to remember the last move that I was discussing, the one that pays for itself. Just going ahead and calling the families who left and the families who stayed. It is the one that most schools never do. If you want to find the only leaks in your enrollment system, your school, and its growth, the Family Fit scorecard below scores the 7 places families slip, and it's free. You'll also find a video on the right families method. It shows you how I turned the right families into families who stay for years at your school. You can start with whichever made sense for the state in which you are. But whatever else you do, just call somebody who left.